So, um, let's get started. 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Hubbell from today's edition newsletter on January 31st, 2026 for our regular Saturday live stream. And the format of this is changing a little bit. When we first started getting together in the first weeks of the uh, Trump administration, it was sort of an emergency, all hands on deck type call. And I feel like now we're being much more strategic about these meetings. So I'll make just a few comments and then I have a number of reader questions. We'll keep this to 30 minutes. But I also just want to thank all of you for joining me every Saturday morning. I look forward to this. It's become one of my favorite parts of writing the newsletter. So thank you. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate the feedback. I want to say just something about how far we've come in a week. Last week, I learned maybe 30 or 45 minutes before I went live on the Substack about the public execution of Alex Preddy, and it was extraordinarily difficult, frankly, to talk about. We didn't know what the facts were entirely, and I think we were all in shock. I think we are still in shock. And the administration had made some reflexive statements calling him a domestic terrorist and attempting to smear him out of the box. Um, okay, so the video is blurry. Um, I'm not certain what to do about that. Uh, I'm working through my desktop camera. So um, I will say that in the time since the shooting, the facts have gotten much worse than we first anticipated them to be. He was not only shot in the back, he was shot in the back 4 times, and then as I think he lay lifeless on the ground, he was shot another 6 times. After that, those officers who executed Alex Preddy were removed from Minnesota, so they would be out of the jurisdiction, and they were put to work somewhere else. Um, and it was only after a public outcry that they were put on administrative leave. And it took several days for the administration to realize that killing people in public in cold blood, as with both Renee Good and Alex, was something that the American people would not stand for. And so the Trump administration has attempted to change its tone, but I think it's not a substantive change. I think I saw something this morning as I was preparing for this, uh, that even Kristi Noem had said that her initial reaction to the shooting might have been mistaken, and she said that only because she's in the doghouse at the White House. She was not allowed to speak at the last cabinet meeting on Thursday. So she's out of favor. The only thing she cares about is being in favor, and she thinks that if she pretends to be nicer, that she will somehow be back in Trump's good graces. There are many, many, many things we could say about what happened, and I've written about them during the week. Uh, Publicly executing, killing citizens who are engaged in peaceful protest is just the hallmark of a fascist dictatorship. A lot of ink has been spilled about that, but I want to talk about just one aspect of this shooting, um, because I think it is a hopeful sign for us. Um, and that is how the people of Minneapolis have reacted, not only to the shooting of Alex, but Renee, but to the entire ICE invasion. And what the people of Minneapolis are doing is just absolutely extraordinary. They are coming together as a community, as a people, in a way that they probably have not since World War II or since the last um, major natural disaster to hit Minneapolis. They are taking care of one another. They are hiding people. They are assisting people to remain indoors. They are gathering food. They are driving people to the pharmacy. They're driving kids to school in other parents' cars to protect them. Moms and dads are standing in front of schools as a human shield against ICE. I mean, my God, would we have thought that the citizens of Minneapolis would have to do this in order to defend their liberty? No, but they're doing it. And they just didn't do it one day and then everybody went home. They're doing it day after day in the bitter cold. And they are inspiring all of us. They are teaching all of us the simple thing we need to do in order to prevail, which is just simply to come together as Americans in community. If we can do that, there is nothing that the Trump administration can do to touch us, to break us, to make us bend to their will. I mean, I don't what it's however cold it is in Minneapolis today, and I'm gonna say -20 with wind chill of -40, there are people standing out there on street corners. God bless you. And if you saw the video from the people in Chicago in essentially whiteout blizzard conditions out there protesting in support of the people in Minneapolis, I mean, that's just so gratifying, and what we're seeing is that we're all becoming like citizens of Minneapolis. We're coming together in ways that has finally broken through the sense of inertia and helplessness that I think afflicted many of us during the first 8 months of Trump's second term, where it was just like one body blow after another. We're no longer sitting back just taking those body blows. We're all citizens of Minneapolis. So to the people of Minneapolis, I wanna say thank you for showing us the way. And for the people of every other city, large and small, across America, follow their example. If we do that, we are going to win much sooner than later. So, that's my reflection on the news, and I will stop there. There's just so much to cover. I'm not gonna try to rush through it. That's what I try to cover in the newsletter, and hopefully it is, uh, helpful. So let me just I have a number of questions here, and I'll try to, keep up. The first is there are a lot of questions about what can we do with respect to the Senate Democrats, the 23 Senate Democrats who voted to pass the 5 appropriations bill and the two-week continuing resolution for, DHS. What I would say is they're still open to persuasion. I would not have done what they did. We gave away a lot of leverage. Republicans would never have done that, and yet we continue to do that. We go along to get along. I would call them, and I listed all 23 in today's edition of the newsletter in a footnote. And if one of your congressmen or someone you feel moved or to call is on the list, I would call them and say, "Okay, you voted for a 2-week extension. Now you must hold their feet to the fire. Don't give in because there are long lines at TSA or it's going to affect the mission of the Coast Guard or because FEMA funds are involved. Cleave those off in separate bills. Leave DHS there unfunded. For once, stand up, take a stand, and do not yield. Republicans are already saying they're not going to give an inch, that they've passed a bill in the House, and that's it. They're not going to negotiate whatsoever. Okay, they can have that position. Then the Democratic position should be you will not get our votes to fund DHS. People like Adam Schiff and Senator Van Hollen have said they will not vote for one dime to fund DHS until there are major reforms. I believe them. And I don't believe that the major reforms are the ones that are currently on the table being floated by Chuck Schumer to Axios and the Wall Street Journal. What Chuck Schumer has proposed as reforms is that ICE will comply with the law. We need more than that. We need to fire all of the agents who have been unvetted, untrained, who have not had their criminal backgrounds reviewed, who've engaged in fascistic tactics and haven't been disciplined. We need to clean out the senior management at DHS and ICE. We need to fire Steve Miller. We need to impeach Kristi Noem. And yeah, all of those things are not part of the legislation. Tough. We have leverage. Let's use it. If Chuck Schumer, if all he gets out of this deal is that ICE promises that it will behave itself, then we have received nothing because ICE should be complying with the law today, and they choose not to. A reader asked, why is the House out of session? And that's just a negotiating tactic. Mike Johnson simply passes a bill that he can get through his razor thin majority in the House and then leaves town so nobody can change their mind. And so the Senate Democrats think that the only option is to approve what the House has done. Um, the House is going to come back in order for them to pass the 5 appropriations bills that were passed on um, Friday with any speed. They will need a 2/3 vote of the members of the House. I do not think they are going to get it. So there will be another chance for House Republicans to vote again on all 6 of the bills, including the DHS funding bill, and hopefully those 6 or 7 Democrats who voted for the bill last time around will change their mind. I understand that some of them have issued apologies for what they did. Um, Seymour Mansfield asked makes a good point about why is it that we are only talking about Renee Good and Alex Preddy? There have been 34 other people who've died in some fashion or another through these ICE operations. Why aren't we talking about them? And the answer is we should be. And I see a lot of signs where people are holding up either the names of all 34 or are referring to the 34. We also have to be effective communicators. We also have to be able to keep our finger on the pulse of where Americans are focused. And so if in order to be effective communicators today and tomorrow and for 3 or 4 days, we need to lift up specific examples, then that's what we should do. And it does not mean that we're denigrating what happened to anyone before. We should remember them all. But we also need to be smart and effective in how we try to shape public opinion. Um, Someone asked me how come I didn't give a shout out to the kids who were involved in the walkout yesterday. That's a very good point. And the answer is that I got a lot of photos from readers showing teenagers and younger kids walking out of school. And I have a policy that I do not publish pictures of minors, of teenagers or young children. And so, I had to scan all the pictures very closely to make certain that I didn't disclose the identity of any children or minors. And in that process, I sort of went too far and didn't think about mentioning the kids because I was thinking about protecting them. So kudos to all of the kids who walked out. There were a lot. I got pictures from all over America. Um, you know, I received a picture this morning from a reader who has a child who's maybe 6 or 7 this morning standing out on a street corner with a sign, and he sent it to me. And it was heartwarming. But obviously, I'm not going to publish that. Um, I received a lot of questions about the raid uh, in Fulton County and the seizure of all of the ballots and the tabulating tapes. Let me just say that is a crime of monstrous proportions, and we will at some day get to the bottom of it. For example, who is the magistrate who approved the seizure of the evidence of the people's election in a way that spoiled it forever? It was under lock and key by the custodians who knew how to protect it, and now it's in boxes in a warehouse with a bunch of FBI agents pawing through data. Who knows what that data will or will not show? But more to the point, the way criminal subpoenas and search warrants are supposed to work um, is that you go into court and you say, I think that there's evidence of a crime. And the magistrate says, what is it? And you say, here it is. It's there were 10 people who voted illegally, and the magistrate should say, "Okay, here's a warrant for those 10 people." You don't say, "Go out and collect 400,000 ballots and destroy the integrity of the 2020 presidential vote and every other vote in Fulton County." It is beyond me what this magistrate was thinking in issuing that warrant, because in order to get that warrant, someone who would have had to say all 400,000 of those ballots are evidence of fraud. And I don't know what Trump said. I do, or what the DOJ said. I do know what Trump tweeted, which is this Italian satellite Chinese thermostat theory. So if a magistrate judge, a federal magistrate judge who was respected, who had a good career, issued that warrant because somehow the Chinese used an Italian satellite and a thermostat to flip votes from Trump to Biden and bought that after it had been rejected multiple times, that magistrate needs to be terminated, needs to be fired. It is so bad, it's hard for me to believe that there is not something amiss. And I suspect that what happened is that the DOJ misrepresented the facts to the magistrate, and we need to see whatever the subpoena was. But I digress. The question that people are worried about is, should we be worried that in the 2026 midterms that the same thing will happen, that Trump will believe that he's losing in Arizona or losing in Georgia or somewhere else, and will send out the FBI to seize the ballots? Look, that's a possibility. It is not, I think, even remotely possible for this reason. He tried to do that 60 times in 2020 and he failed. And the reason he failed is because he couldn't come up with evidence of fraud. And the judges in those cases rightfully said, "Look, you've presented me, two ballots that you think are fraudulent. Okay, open a criminal investigation. Go knock yourself out and pursue those two ballots. But you don't get to invalidate every single ballot that was cast." And that's the right approach. That's what the magistrate should have done here, but did not for whatever reason. But I think we dodged a bullet, because the fact that Trump did this now means that we will be able to expose the rot and the corruption and the laughable basis for whatever happened here, and challenge it in court. I hope groups like Mark Elias and other pro-democracy groups, ACLU, are filing lawsuits right now. Fulton County should already have a lawsuit filed. I don't understand why that hasn't happened, but it will. And when it does, what we will find out is that the nut jobs in the White House who believe in this Italian satellite Chinese thermostat theory somehow persuaded Pam Bondi to get some U.S. attorney from Missouri to persuade a magistrate judge in North Georgia to issue an absolutely obscene warrant. So we have fair warning. We can stop this one. We can sharpen our pencils and be prepared the next time it happens. And look, the empirical evidence is 2020, not what happened in Fulton County. In 2020, we stopped at 60 times. Okay, this time somehow they were able to get the fix in. Now, let me just also say that the public reaction to this whole Fulton issue has been muted. Um, and maybe because it's old news. But let's just do a thought experiment and imagine that in 2026, the Democrats are running the board up and down the table, and then Trump sends out the FBI and so the ICE and whatever to seize ballot boxes. What are we going to do? Are we going to say, "Gosh, I just hate it when the president steals our elections like that"? Or are we going to take to the streets and say, over our what bodies? I mean, we have agency. We are not potted plants. And we shouldn't just say, "Oh God, what bad things is Trump going to do to us?" No, it's, he may try to do this to us, but we have agency. If he went into Fulton County in 2026, I would hope that there would be tens of millions of people in the street within an hour to stop it. We have the power. We the people are the source of all power, and we can take it back on a moment's notice if we want to. Someone said they didn't understand the title to today's newsletter, where I said, it's time for the media to join the resistance. Better late than never. Um, I'm guilty of not expressing my complete thought, and that is the media is understandably completely outraged about what happened to Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, I believe is her name, by being arrested for reporting on a protest. And I've seen a level of alarm in mainstream media and other words that you just haven't seen before. And they say things like, are they coming for me next? Well, that's a really good question. One you should have been asking 8 years ago. And my point is that yesterday there was a news conference with Todd Blanche, and the White House press corps treated him, they asked him a few tough questions, but they treated him with respect and deference. They did not challenge obvious lies that he made. And I don't understand that, other than the press thinks that, well, if we say, when Todd Blanche says there's no one who's been more consistent in calling for the disclosure of the Epstein files than President Trump, why one reporter didn't say, wait a minute, remember that time he called it a hoax? And when he dragged Boebert into the Situation Room and tried to prevent her from voting for the discharge petition? And remember that time that Mike Johnson, on Trump's orders, kept Congress or the House out of session for 40 days so we couldn't get to the Epstein files? How can you sit here and lie to us and tell us that Trump has been the one person who's been consistent about releasing the Epstein files? That's what I would have said if I were there. None of the White House reporters said that. And my point is that the press has been giving Trump and his minions a presumption of legitimacy that they do not have. He's a convicted felon, a twice impeached president. He is engaged in massive self-dealing, unlike anything we have ever seen before. And the press just sort of goes along to get along. And so what I'm suggesting is that it's time to be done with both siderism. It's time to stop treating Trump as if he is a legitimate president of the United States who deserves not to be called out on every single word that issues from his mouth. So that was the point of what I'm saying. I'm hoping that the arrest of Don Lemon and Georgia Fort will energize the press in the same way that the Watergate scandal energized the press. Someone asks, we've got 6 minutes left. Someone asked why our Democratic leaders don't have daily news conferences where they call out the lies in a uniform way and create a consistent counter narrative to what Republicans are doing. That's a really good idea. It was one that was suggested again and again and again at the beginning of the Trump administration. The idea was to have a people's cabinet, which would be a center of the resistance and a center of truth. And what happened is the DNC said, that's a good idea. We'll make it a committee and then we'll ensure it never goes anywhere. And that's what's happened. The People's Cabinet is some committee at the DNC. And if anyone can cite one thing that People's Cabinet has said or done to make a difference, I'll buy everybody donuts who's on the call this morning. And that would be 1,170 donuts. So let me just look at, additional questions. Could you comment on the importance of clawing back additional funding that DHS got last summer? Very good question. So I just want to remind people that something very unusual happened in the big ugly bill, and that is that ICE and DHS got, call it $140 billion for immigration enforcement, most of which went to ICE. Normally, money is not appropriated in reconciliation bills. There's a separate bill, which is now before Congress, which is an appropriations bill. But they set up this a way to circumvent the funding process so that ICE has essentially its operating budget locked in through 2029. It doesn't really need any money now. DHS does. Its parent agency. And so what the reader is suggesting is that it's not enough just to say, okay, we want to reform ICE. We want that money back that should not have been appropriated in the reconciliation bill. And we want ICE to have to come back to us every year and justify its existence, which it doesn't have to do if it has its entire budget appropriated already through 2029. So when you're nudging your senators and representatives, you should say, claw back some of that money or all of it. Just give ICE its current operating budget less 25% just because. And then give us the rest of it back and come back next year and justify your existence. So that's a really good question. Um, Do you think we need to find a new Democratic leader in the Senate? Yes. Um, okay. Okay, people are asking about what are the next moves? And I think that's a very good question. Um, the people in Minneapolis are showing us the way. I don't know what the tipping point is or whether it's 5 million or 10 million or 20 million or 50 million. But there's a tipping point there. And I mean a tipping point as in bringing down this regime to the point where we break Trump's death grip on the Republican Party in Congress and they start doing their job. I continue to believe that the major institutions have failed us. Congress is like just on the bubble of maybe starting to think about doing its job, which is pathetic this far in. I think some senators are becoming much more, I don't mean this in a negative way at all, radicalized as part of the resistance. I mean, you look at Adam Schiff, you look at Senator Van Hollen, you look at Ruben Gallego, um, they're Senator Alex Padilla. They're not going back. They have put a line in the sand, but still, I don't think we can fully rely on Congress. We're starting to see cracks in the judiciary. I mean, who was this magistrate judge who issued this awful search warrant to the DOJ based on these ludicrous lies about the 2020 election being rigged? So we're starting to see cracks there. The Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals is backing Trump on almost everything, and then ultimately the Supreme Court is no ally. So Congress is not really helping us. The Supreme Court and some federal judges, although by and large, the federal judiciary has been a bulwark, and we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. The media has been inconsistent. They're starting to wake up, but they're starting to report on what we're doing. They're starting to call out Trump. That's great. A year in, a little bit late to the party, as my newsletter said today, but better late than never. And that just leaves us. And there are only so many levers that we have to pull. And one of the most effective is becoming protests. And I do think strikes, economic strikes, general strikes. The first one on Friday was a good start. I'm waiting for the national grassroots organizations in a coordinated fashion to call for a general strike that will shut down a significant portion of the economy and the government in a way that really will wake people up. In the meantime, if people want to do these smaller strikes, I completely, fully support them because we never know which of those strikes will catch fire and light the hearts and minds of Americans. So the way forward is us. It's exactly what we're doing. We've figured it out. We have the path. We can see the way forward. We know what victory looks like. It looks like what the people of Minneapolis are doing, and we should keep it up. So we're in this together. In fact, together there isn't anything that we cannot do. I think we need to be realistic that things are going to get worse before they get better, but we should not despair over that fact. A reader posted a question in the spreadsheet, said, "I'm afraid." Um, and let me see if I can get to this, because I think it. Why do I feel afraid? How can I be brave when some days I am afraid? Completely honest human answer. And here is the answer. You don't have to do it all yourself. It's not all on your shoulders. We're in this together. There are other people being brave for you on those days when you don't feel you can do it. But on the days when you feel you can, when you can do something, anything, make a phone call, send a text, you don't have to be the one standing in, 40 degrees below in a blizzard in Chicago. Together, we can be brave because together we're bigger. We have more momentum and heft and scale than anything that Trump or ICE or anyone else can put together. If you feel afraid, that's good because it shows that you understand what is happening to us and that you are locked into your human emotions in a way that is healthy. As Mark Elias frequently says, he feels afraid all the time. And the question is, what are we going to do despite the fact that we feel afraid? And what Mark Elias does is he says he just goes out and he acts with bravery, even though he doesn't feel like doing that. And that's where we are. So God bless you all. I went on a little longer than I should have. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next weekend. If you can go out and protest, add your voices, that's great. Be safe. If you can't go outside for whatever reason, find another way to make your voice heard. Take care, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.